Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, it's Week 7's Buy Low edition here on Old Man Squad Fantasy Basketball. I am Dan Besbris. Thank you so much, everybody, for tuning in and for hitting that like button and subscribing to all of our stuff here on this fantabulous network of shows. That, of course, includes our YouTube page that now, I believe, cleared 5,700 subs, hunting for 6,000. Can we get there before the new year? I believe that we can, with your help, by continuing to like, subscribe, comment, all that good stuff. And honestly, just watching the videos is actually part of the equation. So thank you for everything you guys have done to this point. You can find me on Twitter at Dan Besbris, DanBesbris. I am on the new Blue Sky social media network at Old Man Squad. Again, very cool that I ended up in an NBA starter pack that really kind of jump-started things over there, if that's your new spot. And if you're not using any of those things, I would strongly suggest changing that. Pick one or the other. I don't actually care which one you pick. There's more stuff still on Twitter. NBA people there's been a pretty good presence shifted. But you got to have some kind of pipeline to the news in between podcasts. So please do follow at one of those two locations in between when you hit the like and subscribe button here on the show. On today's episode, we got 3 new names for you, 3 honorable mentions as well. So a total of 6 names here on the buy low. We'll also go through every buy low we've mentioned so far to this point. I think it's just a nice way to sort of take responsibility for the crap I've said already. Whether it's good or bad, hopefully mostly good. You know what? I haven't even looked at it before going into the show. I just did the new slides on this PowerPoint, and, we'll focus on those. BetOnline continues to be the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for online betting. From the earliest odds to in-game live betting, BetOnline provides you with all the action, deep breath, and the ability to watch the games as they happen. With the largest selection of odds on everything from football, the NBA, and college basketball, NHL to UFC, you can head to BetOnline today. And please don't forget to use our brand new promo code BELIEVE, BLEAV, for your welcome bonus on your first deposit. That's BLEAV. Bet online. The game starts here. Buy low, week 7. Let's do this damn thing. Proven names are slumping hard or just not living up to expectations. Let's go get them. This is a fun week, and you'll see when we get into the names, because it's 2 really household names, 1 monumental household name, 1 sort of like medium household name, and another one is a NBA household name. But it's guys that are like, you can feel it. And frankly, like, lack of time was a big reason that we didn't have a traditional buy low show last week. We had the hot and cold episode, which was a lot of fun. People really seem to like that one so far this year. But we didn't have an old school buy low episode last week for 2 reasons. Reason number 1 was it was Thanksgiving week, so there just wasn't as much time as usual. My kids were both home from school. One of them still recovering from hernia surgery. They're both back in school today. Our nanny is back today, which is great. So I have a little time in the afternoon to do this secondary show. But the other reason that I didn't feel like we needed to force a buy low show last week was that I just didn't feel like there were obvious buy low names in the middle of last week. 1 or 2 popped up towards the end of the week, and they've both continued to be not very good until today, so we can get them on here. But before we get to the new names, here are the old names. And anybody that's watched these shows, you're going to have seen these slides before. This was our week 1 list all the way back. This was 2 days into the season when everybody had basically played 1 game. It was Tyrese Halliburton, who's obviously gotten a lot better since then, but still has this home road thing going on. Jimmy Butler, who's been very up and down. Nick Claxton, who continues to be down. Bogdan Bogdanovic, who immediately got hurt after that. Karl Anthony Towns. You guys might not even remember this, but he had a bad first game because of foul trouble. He exploded. Jalen Suggs has been very good. Darius Garland has been outstanding. Zach Edey got hurt, so that one didn't really land. And then Tobias Harris has been sort of plodding along at a not particularly fantastic clip. That one's still kind of jury's out a little bit. And then we took a short break. We took 2 weeks off from buy lows. And we got back into him in week 4 with Lauri Markkanen, who's rocketed up the board. Jimmy Butler made it back onto the list and still hasn't quite gotten to where he needs to be. Freddie VanVleet that was an easy one. He's up like 30, 40 slots since that show. Josh Giddey is starting to get things moving in the right direction. Drew Holiday, hints of moving in the right direction, but not quite all the way there. And finally, our most recent buy low show, we put Halliburton back on there, and he's inched up a little bit, not a whole lot since then. Joel Embiid was kind of like the big swing. That one has not panned out yet. And then Trey Murphy, who was like kind of coming back, but kind of not really. And that one is beginning to cash in a little bit as well. We also threw out an injury couple of notes in that last show 2 weeks ago, DeJounte Murray and Scotty Barnes. As you might recall, the news at that point was that DeJounte was expected back soon, and we had heard that Barnes was like back at practice, but we didn't have a timetable on them. That's obviously working out pretty well. Again, I don't know if you guys were able to pull that one off. Those are a little tougher. So far on that week 5 show, Trey Murphy is really the only one that's actually moving in the right direction. Here's what we got for today, and we're going to work our way through the list based on basically where they were drafted. And so the first name on the list is the King. He's the highest drafted player on today's board of buy lows, and he's earned his place on this list. LeBron James is currently number 68, thanks to about a 2.5 week stretch of absolutely atrocious points league level basketball, which I know maybe shouldn't be the insult that I'm treating it as, but LeBron over the last 2 weeks has been so bad. 20 points, 7 rebounds, 9 assists. Okay, that's great, but only 1 3-pointer, half a steal, half a block, high volume, 43.5% from the field, medium volume, 72% at the foul line, almost 5 turnovers per game over his last 8 ball games. That's ranked number 180 during that stretch. This is like a bad 2 weeks from RJ Barrett right now. Here's the thing, though, guys. LeBron is not going to shoot 43.5%. He's not. Free throw might stay down. I don't know. But the turnovers probably also won't stay at 5. He's in a weird stretch of kind of second-guessing himself a little bit. And maybe some of that is age. And that's been kind of the driving force behind why I think you might be able to pull off this buy low. And I said throw somebody out there in the 35 to 45 range. Somebody that's in that range right now that you're pretty sure is going to stick there. Who would that be? I mean, Freddie VanVleet would not be a bad one to flip out there for LeBron. That might get it done. I don't think Tyler Hero is going to be enough to get it done. Brandon Miller plus someone else might get it done. OG Anunoby plus someone else might get it done. I would look at DeMar DeRozan as a possibility. I would look at, John Collins is not going to get it done. There'll have to be some other part of it. Dyson Daniels is one you could consider pairing up with somebody much farther down the board. So there's a lot of options of names that I think might have enough juice to get you LeBron. Bam Adebayo is an interesting one, although he's a little bit of a buy low himself. If you, you could try offering up Joel Embiid, although I still would rather try to get him for a bargain basement price. Cade at number 59, because this is like LeBron's floor, basically, is what Cade has done so far this year. In any event, the reason I think we can pull this off, and the name of the player to use, I actually, believe it or not, I think is less relevant right now than whether or not this is even a feasible thing. My argument for why this is feasible is because you're starting to see, for literally the first time ever, conversations about whether LeBron is losing the battle with Father Time. At some point, he will. It's just life. He may be a cyborg, but there's still like a human core, or his power module is eventually going to lose a few beats. And we've seen it already on defense. He doesn't guard anybody. LeBron can't chase anybody around on defense anymore. He can try to stay in front of somebody, and then he can box out pretty well because he's huge and super strong. But on offense, we saw it the first 3.5 weeks of the season. He was a top 20 guy. And then he just ran out of gas. And you could make all kinds of arguments as to why that might have happened. But to be like, oh, well, all of a sudden Father Time just won is, I think, a little bit disingenuous. You know, like if you're looking at what are we sizing up here? LeBron's first 2.5, 6 games. Where were we at with this one? It was a pretty good. I'm trying to find the exact time. Was it like the first 4 weeks to like November 13th? There we go. So the first 10 games, LeBron was ranked basically on the turn. Yeah, he was shooting over his head from 3-point land, but everything else was about where it needed to be. His turnovers were at 3.1 instead of 5. Like, for the first 11, 12 games this year, LeBron looked like LeBron. And for the last 8 games, he's looked like Jalen Green. Or that's not true. He's looked like RJ Barrett, frankly, for the last 8 games. And I think it's a short-term memory thing to be like, oh, well, you know, the time is catching up with him. What's catching up with him is that dude hasn't bothered to take any days off, which I know everybody hates the concept of taking days off, and I know LeBron hates the concept of taking days off, but he needed to take a day off during this stretch of 5 games and 7 nights. It should not be surprising to anyone that LeBron has gotten tired when the Lakers' schedule got heavier. These last 4 or 5 games are maybe the worst games that I've ever seen LeBron James play. That's why, like, the last 2 weeks, he's number 180. And the last week, which is 5 games, remember, he's number 202. He's shooting 39.5% from the field, like at 16.5 points per game. How many times have we seen LeBron average 16 points over a 5-game stretch? Ever? Never? Maybe? He's exhausted. He might even be playing a little bit hurt. I don't like the sound of that. I hate to put that out into the world, but crazier things have happened. But dude's not going to shoot 39.5%. This is still LeBron we're talking about. And he didn't just magically forget how to play basketball between game 12 and game 13. That's just not how it works. I don't care how old the guy is. He doesn't just go, oh, yeah, now I'm done. If he was going to be done, he would have been done, first of all, ages ago, or would have seen any signs of it through the first however many games. And instead, he looked as good as ever. He looked great in the Olympics. He's tired. And I know he's tired because I didn't sleep that great on Sunday night. And I'll be tired for 4 days because of it. Because I'm a year and some odd older than LeBron. And that's how you feel when you're 40 and things are not perfect. And I get it. Comparing myself to LeBron is about the dumbest thing I've ever done on a podcast. But just from like a recovery standpoint, there are human elements to this dude. So no, Father Time didn't just catch him between game 12 and 13. Father Time, I mean, I guess to some degree he did, because he's just older and he needs rest in a way that he didn't when he was in his mid-20s or whatever. But like in terms of, did his game just vanish? Is he just washed all of a sudden? No. He just needs rest. And I'd love to say that that's coming for the Lakers, but actually over the next week or so, it's not. And their schedule doesn't, well, I don't know what next week is going to look like because you got the NBA Cup games that are going to get scheduled in there. And then, guess what? They're not making the NBA Cup semis or finals this year, so they'll have an extra day or 2 off in there in the middle of week 9. And the Lakers' schedule happens to get pretty light in the beginning of week 10. So that's a great opportunity for LeBron to catch his breath. I mean, maybe it's going to take another week and a half. I don't know, for him to bust out of this thing. But they've got that like back-to-back in Sacramento coming out of the NBA Cup. It'll be a very short hiatus. They got Detroit at home, Warriors on the road, and then they play 1 game over 5 days and 2 games over 7. So they're going to have like a 2 or 3 day break coming up at the beginning of week 9. And then they're going to have a stretch of 1 game in 5 days. And then all of a sudden, I'm betting you by that Sacramento or that Cleveland game towards, like, it's Christmas basically, and a little after that, LeBron's probably going to look like LeBron again. And then he'll probably get tired leading up to the All-Star break, and then he'll get some rest, and then he'll look like LeBron again. Because these guys are human. We just notice it when a guy is 40. It happens to a lot of them. It happened to De'Aaron Fox multiple times. It happens to John Morant every freaking year. He goes crazy for like a month, and then you start to see the percentages taper and taper and taper, and all of a sudden he's back down at like 45, 70 something splits instead of 50 and 85. Happens every year. These guys get tired. They're human. It's hard to pace yourself when you've got to play that many minutes the way LeBron does. John Morant's only at 27. Different example this year. So go try to get him. I think he can be had. I understand that there's this sort of like, is there any real way to buy low on LeBron James? Because his name is LeBron James and it's going to carry a lot of weight. But I think anybody that has him right now is going, oh my God, this is crushing. Because he's killing teams at the moment. Like he's nauseating to roster. Next name on the list is one I've talked about on social media a lot, and that's Desmond Bane, who's currently ranked number 144 on Yahoo. He's number 143 on Basketball Monster, which is kind of amazing for guys to be in that range, ranked so tight to one another. And he's been bad. In every sense of the word, Desmond Bane has been bad. He was hurt at the beginning of the year. What did he play? Did he play anything before he went out? There was like a game or two in there before he went down, right? He's at 14 games right now. Do the game log here if I really want to get crafty with it. But we don't need to. Here's the thing. Bane's minutes are down 7 from last year and down about 3-ish from what you'd call kind of this typical 3 of 4, 3 of 4.5, something like that, from kind of a typical Memphis starter number. The Grizzlies like to keep their players' minutes down. What you need to know about Desmond Bane right now is a couple of things. Number one, his effective field goal percent is about 8 to 10% worse than what we'd expect right now. His free throw percent is about 10 percentage points worse than what you'd expect right now. Believe it or not, he hasn't actually been all that bad on two-pointers. His threes are not dropping. His free throws are not dropping. And he hasn't really gotten his sea legs back yet. But with every passing game, there's sort of this looking at it like, are we about to run out of time on this one? Because I know you can buy low on him. I literally saw it happen in one of my leagues. It wasn't me, but he got traded for... Who the hell did I tweeted about it now? I can't remember what the hell I tweeted. It was somebody that wasn't nearly as good as Desmond Bane. But then people coming back, like, you guys keep asking me things like, oh, should I trade so-and-so for Bane? I'm like, no, start lower. He's number 144, and people are seeing the fact that he's only taking, whatever it is, 12 shots a game so far this year, 12.6, after being at 18.5 last year and 16 the year before that. And there's like, oh, yeah, Memphis just has too many weapons right now. Desmond Bane is better than all but like 2 of those weapons. He's going to go back to being the number 3 scoring option on this team, even if he isn't right now, because he's Desmond freaking Bane. He didn't just get passed by Jalen Wells. And Santi Aldama is not going to be this warm all year. Bane is going to get his job back. The shots are going to go up from 12.5 back to, what was he in the last? He should have took 15 shots in their last ball game. That's a totally reasonable number for him. And that was, I mean, I don't think it should be all that surprising to see him get to that point. He's still not making his threes. Steals and blocks are around where we would expect, so nothing crazy there. This is a guy who's going to work his way back. And look, I mean, we all saw him last year sort of forced to take over the bulk of the offense because the rest of the Grizzlies were kind of out for the entire season. He was number 34, taking 18.5 shots per game. He's not going to get back to number 34, and we never thought that. But somewhere, I mean, a 40s range ranking, not 40, but like 40s. So like 46, 47, 50, 55, something like that. Somewhere between 40 and 60 feels like a pretty reasonable target for Bane. 40 being the very unlikely top end, and 60, I think, also being almost an equally unlikely bottom end of the window for him. And where he's at right now, at 144, that means that there is room for you to, quote-unquote, overpay for what his rank is right now, but still get a value against where you think he ends up. And I think a worst case scenario for Bane is still somewhere around 60. When I say around 60, if he's like 62 and somebody comes back to me and they're like, Dan, you said a worst case was 60. I'm saying around 60. So like 60 to 65 range. 65. What I mean, does that count as 65 around 60? I hope so. But he's at 144 right now, and people have started to panic. And so you can go and get him for somebody that's been kind of hot lately, that's like in the 95 range. You don't even need to start at 75, which was my price tag is 70 to 90. You don't need to start at 70. You can start behind 90 and see if something moves the needle. You can start with Mikal Bridges. You can start with Trey Murphy, who's probably going to do more as the year goes on. But regardless, that's kind of not the point of all of this. You could potentially start if he was healthy with Miles Bridges. You could start with Julius Randle if you wanted to go more into category league build. You could start with Cam Thomas. Big scoring, but what the hell else are we getting out of this dude? Try Daniel Gafford. Try CJ McCollum, who's down at 85 on a team that might end up tanking before too long. Try DeAndre Ayton at 84. These are name brand guys who just simply aren't that great and really aren't going anywhere, as opposed to Desmond Bane, who's better, significantly better than these guys, and does nothing right so far this year. He's at 41.5% from the field, 77 at the free throw line. Like, this is crazy. These numbers are nuts. He's going to work his way back to where he was. I don't know if it's all going to happen overnight. You might get a couple of gigantic games that pushes him there, or it might be just like a slow, methodical, oh, now he's, starting to look more like himself again. But either way, I love me some Desmond Bane buy low. My third name and final name on today's board is also a member of the Los Angeles Lakers, because sometimes you get these slumps that coincide with one another, whether it's, someone like a LeBron who's old and gassed, or Austin Reaves, whose job has changed a little bit after at the beginning of the year. It looked like he was going to be kind of like the primary when it wasn't LeBron. And they've moved bodies around so that he's on the floor with LeBron James a little more often. And D'Angelo Russell is getting to run that second unit a little more often. So to that end, like, I thought Austin Reaves had top 50 potential when he was like the other main dude. And now he's back to being like, oh, you and D'Angelo Russell, you guys get to do this other stuff. But he's currently ranked 120th. Austin Reaves is who we're talking about right now. 120 is too low. And I can tell you it's too low because he's nowhere near where his percentages should be. So this is one of those ones that is really more about the math of it all. And I know he's dealing with a sore back and like hip and pelvis area after taking a hard fall a couple days back. I'm not super worried about that. The main thing here with Reaves is if you're comparing season over season, his usage is up. His percentages are down. That's the big thing right now. He's taking more three-pointers, which, I mean, that could force his field goal percent down a little bit all by itself, although his three-point percentage is also down a little bit. This is the first year where more than half of his shots have been from three-point land, and I'm actually kind of hoping that shifts a little bit. But otherwise, everything is around where you'd need it to be. Rebounds and assists are generally fine. I'd like them to be a tiny bit higher based on how often he's handling the basketball this season. Free throw numbers should, I would think, go up quite a bit. I would expect the 2-point percentage to go up a little bit. Free throw rate might increase if he starts to take it to the rim a little bit more. And we're just talking about a guy that, again, he's probably not going to go top 50 because I don't think that's his job anymore. At the beginning of the year, it looked like that might be his job. It's not. But he took 11.5 shots last season. He's at 13 this year. And the bottom line is more usage is more value. And for Austin Reaves right now, it's not, because his field goal percent is down by almost 5. His free throw percent is down against his career number by 8. And that stuff all adds up to creating a downtick. But guys move so fast that are ranked in that 120 range. We're legitimately 2 games away from him being in front of our projection, which is top 80. I don't like that. He can blink an eye and be there. So I would look at the guys ranked, I don't know, near 100 that have a little bit of name recognition, but maybe aren't going to go too far. So, I mean, we looked at some of these guys for whoever the hell we just talked about a minute ago. It wasn't LeBron. It was Desmond Bane. I think Reaves will probably take slightly less than Bane. So look at someone like a Benedict Mathurin. If you think that he maybe loses his job a little bit as guys come back, maybe he doesn't lose a starting job, but he probably loses a little bit of usage. Ivica Zubac, who's turned himself into a god-awful punt free throw guy. So if you're not punting free throws, you could switch off of him. Derek Lively is right in that range. Naz Reid is right in that range. These are all guys that I would exchange for Austin Reaves, even though he's like 10, 15 slots behind them right now. Amen Thompson is one you could give up for Austin Reaves. Looking a little farther down the board, I don't know if there's anybody necessarily behind him. If Jeremy Grant has a big game, you should definitely try to unload him for Austin Reaves. Draymond Green, I would unload for Reaves. You're probably not going to get him for some of these names, but like look down the board. You never know. You might catch somebody who just really wants that guy that you have on your team. Alex Sarr, who's kind of a fun stash, but if you could sell him for maybe a little bit more of a sure thing. I don't know how much higher up the board I would go, at least in terms of like name recognition guys. Aaron Gordon is now that he's playing again, if you could sell high before he even gets his first game back on the court. You're not going to get him for Nick Richards. You could try Goga Batadze, all that probably doesn't work. You could try Aldama or Dort or Julian Champagny or any of these guys. Andrew Wiggins would be an interesting one to try to offer up for Austin Reaves. That might actually get it done. But there are a ton of names, and Reaves, I don't know if you'd say he's slumping as much as LeBron is right now. But again, if there's someone out there in your league that has him, they're probably more acutely aware that he hasn't been that good lately. But for me, a lot of that is the math of it. I think the field goal percent and the free throw percent both come back for Reaves. And the beauty part is I don't need anything else to happen for him to jump 30 or 40 slots. That's it. That's all I need. It's not like with Bane where we're trying to figure out a way to get him 70 or 80 slots up the board. A lot of things need to be better, but they can be. More usage, more playing time, better percentages, all that good stuff. With Reaves, I don't need more usage. I don't need more playing time. I just need the percentages to level off where they have been for a couple of years. And I still believe that those are going to happen. Because while I have many times on this podcast argued that about 20 games into a year is when you start to see what a player actually is. It's not perfect. That 20-game number is an imperfect number. There are plenty of guys out there that are approaching 20 games, but whose percentages haven't fully gotten where they need to be yet. But you can already see the movement in that direction. Larry Markkinen is an interesting example. He's still at 45.6% from the field, but that was like 43 a couple games ago. And his minutes were lower and his field goal attempts were lower and everything's trending towards where you'd expect it to be. And maybe it won't be at 20, but at 16 right now, it's a much clearer direction than it was at 12. Those guys are all over the map. Those guys are, and I say all over the map, that's an expression that's not really the one I meant. What I actually meant is that they're literally all over the ranked list map. Like you can find these guys all over the place where they're trending towards where they're going to end up. And maybe it's not all the way there by game 20, but by game 20, you usually have a better idea. Oh, this is where this guy is headed. This is where he's probably going to end up. As it turns out, there's still some guys that aren't there. Austin Reaves has played 19 games and his percentages are just bad so far this season. Mike Conley's still at 33.5% from the field. He's 16 games in. It apparently is going to take more than 20 for some of these dudes. So the 6 to 7 week estimate, I mean, it's close, but it's not perfect, as are very few things in when you're talking about a smaller sample size. It feels like players should be pretty well set by a quarter of the season, but it's just not. 95% of them are, but that still leaves a handful that aren't. And for some of those that aren't, we buy low or we sell high. That's what we do with it. Here are your honorable mentions on this week's show. You've got Bam Adebayo, who's in a very weird field goal percent doink right now. My issue with Bam, who is still ranked around 50, and that's kind of where I thought he was going to end up anyway, is that his steals are really high at 1.7. That's probably a number that comes down more towards like 1.2. as the season goes. So while the field goal percent and the scoring probably go up, the steals most likely come down. Turnovers probably come up a little bit. And it's pretty good assist to turnover mark so far. I don't know what free throws are going to do the rest of the year. I think Bam, with the extra passing this season, has a chance to maybe cruise a little bit better than last year. So maybe closer to 40 than 50. And so that makes him a very small buy low. And you're going to find some teams that are maybe a bit frustrated with the way things have gone so far. So try offering up a Jakob Poeltl or Pascal Siakam, these guys that are playing really, really well and kind of don't have anywhere to go but stay straight or go down. See if you can turn those guys into someone like a Bam. Paul George is the next name on the honorable mentions list. I don't think you're going to be able to get him because he just came back. And so most folks that have PG are going to want to wait and see what he is over the next 2 to 3 weeks. And if he continues to be a bit of a flop, then you could look at Paul George. But maybe you could get him now. I don't know. He's ranked number 101. And he's probably going to push his way towards the top 40, I would think, this season. Maybe higher if Embiid is out for any stretch longer. So again, if you can get something done with somebody in like the 65 to 75 range, that's what I would think about offering up for a Paul George. And finally, last name is Nick Claxton, whose honorable mention, honestly, because I have no idea what to do with him. I know he's not going to be this bad, but I don't really know where the hell he's going to end up. He's been absolutely well, that isn't even a good word for it. His free throw percent is at 44 so far this year, which, I mean, what the hell are you going to do with that? If you're punting free throws, he's number 97, believe it or not. And there's kind of nowhere to go but up on that one. I don't know if he gets inside the top 100 if you care about free throws. Obviously, without them, he's a much easier buy low target because he's at 9 points and 7.5 boards, and that's a number that we know gets better if his minutes just go up from 24 and change to even like 26 or 27. So it's a small buy low on Claxton. I'm not big time into him this season. I think during draft season, I was like, what are you doing? Why are you drafting a punt free throw center at 70 when you could get, there's like 3 of them going at 110. So I have no Nick Claxton on any of my fantasy teams, but I still think he's a small buy low, and I kept him in the honorable mention department because they might just kind of kid glove him until the trade deadline. And then they might move him, and then somebody else might kind of cut him loose. But February, you've still got all of December, all of January, and half of February if you were trying to think down that path. And that, friends, is just a little bit too long if you're trying to play it more like a stash. If you're trying to get Nick Claxton, you're hoping that he produces something over the next 2.5 months. And I'm not certain that he does. And that's why he didn't make the final cut for today's show. And that is your Week 7 buy low episode. Once again, the recap there. New names on the list. LeBron James, currently number 68. See if you can get him for someone in the 35 to 50 range. Desmond Bane, as I once again sock my microphone with my hand and I'm trying to frantically grab the mouse. Desmond Bane is ranked number 144. See if you can get him for someone in the 70 to 90 range. And Austin Reaves is currently ranked 120. See if you can get him for someone ranked around number 100. We will, of course, circle back on all of these names next week. We'll circle back on everybody that we've given out on these buy low shows all season long because accountability, ladies and gentlemen. They do not drift off into the universe. We're going to track every idiotic or fantastic buy low recommendation that we put out on this show. And these are some of my favorites. LeBron, Bane, and Reaves. They're not I think the easiest one that we gave out was probably Cat after the first couple of days. And then Markkanen was probably and Freddie VanVleet were probably the second and third easiest ones we gave out. We did those in week 4 because those guys were never going to stay at 120 and 85 or 90 or whatever the hell they were, respectively. These ones are pretty easy. LeBron will be better than this. Bane will be better than this. Bane in particular is that one's a shoo-in. So go make it happen. Spend some time. Try to acquire some guys. Again, quick reminder, it doesn't always turn around immediately. Sometimes it takes a few weeks for these guys to get back on the right slope. So know that you are investing with the expectation that there still might be a little bit of a downturn and sort of that darkest before the dawn kind of situation. Remember to hit the like button, YouTubers. Please subscribe no matter how you're taking in the content. Just take a second, hit that button. It really is very quick no matter how you're listening or watching the pod. I'm at Dan Besbris over on Twitter, at Old Man Squad on Blue Sky. Back with you guys tomorrow. We'll have a nice big fat Tuesday recap show, and then hopefully we can do a little hot or cold on Wednesday, but we'll see how, again, timing shakes out. Until then, I'm Dan for Old Man Squad. I'll see you guys later.